today's post-election briefing for senior leaders. My name's Neil Tombe, serving as Deputy Chief of Staff at the Michigan Department of State. Just a few housekeeping things. One, you may have noticed we are recording the session. Just wanted everyone to know. Two, there is a Q&A button on your screen. Feel free to use that Q&A during the event. If we have time, we may have time for a question or two. Otherwise, we'll follow up after the call with answers to questions that folks put in the chat. And again, thank you for coming. And to start with a welcome from the Detroit Regional Chamber, one of our great partners and co-sponsors of this event, Megan Spanitz, who is Chief Strategy Officer there. Thanks, Megan. Megan, you're on mute. Would you mind unmuting?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today. The Detroit Regional Chamber is very grateful to Secretary Benson and the team from the Michigan Department of State for the Michigan Business United for Elections partnership we established this spring. This partnership has engaged the business community to increase trust and participation in the election process. Throughout the summer and fall, Chamber members have been sharing nonpartisan information with their employees and customers on voting. As we prepare for Election Day and the vote tabulation and certification process, the Chamber is encouraging business leaders once again to play a role by sharing facts about the process with employees. Here is a short message from Detroit Regional Chamber President and CEO Sandy Baruah on why this is important.
Thank you, Megan. The general election is fast approaching, and as we all know, it's going to be historically close. The Detroit Regional Chamber is pleased to partner with Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and her professional team of public servants to help get ahead of any disinformation, misinformation that might exist, in many cases driven by foreign actors. The Chamber is engaged in this effort because we believe free markets, capitalism, and a growing economy can only exist in an environment where Americans have confidence in not just their elections, but in basic American norms and values. Now, I spent a good deal of my time in my career in national politics. I can assure you that our elections are secure, they are fair, and they are accurate. They're also the envy of the democratic world. And I say this as someone who has lost several elections that I wish we hadn't. But counting votes accurately takes time, especially in high turnout, close elections like this November is going to be. Our election workers and our election officials are our neighbors, and many of them are volunteers. We owe them our thanks, our respect, and it is our shared responsibility to keep them safe from harm and from threats. The Chamber's polling with our polling partner, the Glengarriff Group, along with the Edelman Trust Barometer, indicate that businesses and business leaders are among the most trusted voices in our communities for accurate information. And as a business leader and influencer, I urge you to use that voice in your community and with your employees to help people keep calm, keep them patient, keep them respectful, and informed of the voting and vote tabulation process. This is important stuff. Finally, in this close election, every vote matters. Join me in urging all of our colleagues at work and neighbors to vote either in the voting booth on Election Day, use an early voting option, which Michigan now allows, or if you move fast enough, you can still get in that absentee ballot. Thank you again for joining us for this important conversation.
Thank you, Megan, for your remarks and for having us share that video message. Next up, I'll turn it over to Michigan Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson. Secretary.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you all for being here today for this final check-in before the election closes at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 5th. We've been hard at work making sure all across our state that our citizens and our election officials have what they need to prepare for this critical moment. And I'm really grateful that so many of you have come together to hear from us about some of the topics critical to the future prosperity of our state, our economy, and our elections. From our Michigan Businesses United for Elections partners to Voter Confidence Council members to chamber representatives and others throughout Grand Rapids and Detroit. You're all respected leaders and trusted voices in your community. So thank you for being here. I know it's a busy time for all of us and really am grateful for your time today. Our business partners on the call today, as Sandy laid out, have reinforced a strong economy requires a strong democracy, and a strong democracy requires clarity, confidence, and certainty in our elections. And in this time of confusion and political uncertainty, business leaders, especially from local and state-based businesses, are well positioned to serve as trusted, nonpartisan voices. Our goal today is to provide a deeper understanding of the post-election processes from election night to the Electoral College, and to help raise understanding and review critical points in the process where trusted voices will be needed to help ward off misinformation. And so we're going to give you a rough outline of what we're going to see in the days and the weeks ahead, both leading up to the polls closing and the polls closing. And I'm going to pass it back to Neil now to talk through. I think unless you want to go straight, Neil, into the goals for today, I'm happy to talk about that too.
Yes, that would be perfect, Secretary.
Okay, great. So in Michigan, we follow the law when it comes to election administration. Unfortunately, some who seek to undermine public trust in elections are going to deliberately misrepresent what are normal parts of routine election administration and try to call it evidence of widespread fraud. But whether through nefarious efforts or simply because the normal stages of election administration are not commonly understood, Michigan citizens are going to be asking questions about what's true and what isn't. And Michigan residents are going to need to hear from you all and all of our state's leaders about how to ensure they can have rightly placed faith in our elections. And so this is why you all have a really important role to play. And by taking this opportunity to step up into a role of added civic leadership, you can help protect our democracy and help educate your constituents on the facts about our elections, whether they be your customers, your employees, or everywhere in between. And you don't need to be an election expert to do this. We are here to provide you with all the information and support you will need. We just need you to help us get that message out and use your voice to take down the temperature, share the truth, which is that Michigan's elections are safe, secure, and accessible for all eligible citizens. Now, Jonathan's going to provide a briefing on post-election processing, which is what happens after the polls close at 8 p.m., so that we can engage you in helping to tell the story of all the work that's being done to protect the security and accuracy of our vote totals. I'll add and reemphasize this year compared to last year in 2020 is very different, in part because you may have been seeing the numbers. Already 2 million citizens have voted or have returned their ballots in this election. That means about 1.6 or 7 million people have voted from home and returned their ballots already, which is extraordinary. And also close to 300 or over 300,000, I think close to 400,000 or more have already voted early in person, which means they put their ballots through the ballot through the machine. So all of that to say is we have a number of provisions in place to protect the sanctity of all of those ballots and the process. But what's new this year, and what just started on Monday, yesterday, was the pre-processing of all of those ballots that are being returned through the mail or at local drop boxes. That pre-processing and tabulation, ultimately feeding those ballots into the machines, is really important because in 2020, we couldn't start that until Election Day itself. Now it's started, which puts us in a position to have our results back and unofficial results ready sooner than they would have been in 2020, which is a good thing. We're still going to wait and see until after the polls close. We'll be able to give a real estimate to people as to when those unofficial results will be ready. But all that said is Jonathan's going to now provide you a briefing on all of that post-election process and take some questions so that we give you our full toolbox of education resources along with additional websites so that you can educate yourself about that counting tabulation process, and let us know what else you need because we're here to support you. Neil, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Secretary. And up next, as Secretary Benson said, is Michigan's Director of Elections, Jonathan Brater, to talk about those processes the Secretary was mentioning.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today and for the work you're doing to help share accurate information about elections in Michigan. My name is Jonathan Brater. I'm the Director of the Michigan Bureau of Elections in the Department of Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the various procedures that take place after the polls close and after Election Day, but between then and when we actually get to the counting of the electoral votes on January 6th. A couple of things I just want to emphasize at the outset here is that this is a process that has a lot of checks and balances in place. It's a process that has a lot of bipartisan checks and balances that are built in to the post-election review system as an additional point of verification. And it's also very decentralized. We run elections at the local level in Michigan, and when we canvass them, we're also doing it at the county level. So the work that's being done to get the results in, the unofficial results in, and then canvass and certify those results is being done by hundreds of different canvassers and thousands of election workers all across the state. So we're really relying on a broad range of people to get this done. Of course, for a lot of people, the election is over on election night. That's how they think of it anyway. But for those who are going through the process, it's really just starting in many ways. So the polls do close on November 5th, Tuesday at 8 p.m. People who are in line at 8 p.m. Are still able to vote. So sometimes voting is continuing after 8 p.m., especially in a busy election. We do expect this year at some point on Wednesday, November 6th, to have our unofficial results complete, all the unofficial results coming in from our various voting locations. And it's possible that the media will have called the race in Michigan Tuesday night or Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon. It really just depends on how close it is and how quickly these unofficial results come in. So that's not really something that the process can decide, but it will just be a factor of what's going on in the election. Once we get past unofficial results coming in, that's when we get into the canvass process. So for that entire 2 weeks, as I'll talk about in a little more detail, our county canvassers are working to canvass and certify at the county level. Right after that, pretty much a couple days later, the Board of State Canvassers is scheduled to meet to review the county canvasses and certify them. After that, we have a period of time where recounts may be occurring if they are required or if they are requested. And then we get to December 11th, which is the date under federal law where we provide the deadline to provide the results that are the official results to the federal government. And then the Electoral College meets on December 17th, and those votes are counted in Congress on January 6th. So that's the broad timeline that we're looking at. As you can see, quite a bit is still happening after Election Day. So yeah, let's go talk about unofficial results. As soon as the polls close, our election workers and our clerks try to, as quickly as they can, without sacrificing accuracy, get those unofficial results out. So, when people are turning on their TVs and looking for the election results, most people are just thinking of those as the results, but they are in fact unofficial results, which are not final, but are usually pretty accurate and are being provided to the public so that they can basically get a snapshot of who appears to have won the election. Again, unless it is extremely close, that usually is who won the election, but obviously the closer the election, the longer it may take to really determine the winner based on the final results. A couple things that are important to emphasize here is that there are some procedures that have to take place after the polls close before these unofficial results can go in. So even though voting may end right at 8 p.m., sometimes a little after if there are lines, there are a lot of things that the bipartisan election inspectors, who are our poll workers, have to do to close down the polling place. For example, they are checking to make sure the precinct is in balance, meaning that the number of ballots they have matches the number of names on the poll book. They're making sure all their paperwork is in order. And sometimes if there's issues that they need to reconcile, it can take a while. It can sometimes take a few hours to close down a polling place. They may have to retabulate ballots if there was an issue with the tabulator. So there's certain things that they might have to do. That's not usually what happens, but there are some polling places where it takes longer. The other thing that is going to be different this year is we have unofficial results that are coming in from a couple of different types of voting. So we have, as always, as we've always had, we have our election day polling place results. Those are going to come from the ballots that voters put in the tabulators all day, and then the results are run in the evening. We're also going to have on Tuesday night the results from early voting, and that is proving to be very popular. We've already had hundreds of thousands of early in-person votes this year, but although those people are putting their ballots in the tabulators during the entire early voting period, the results are not run until 8 p.m. on election night. So nobody knows the results or how people are voting until Tuesday night. So that is another thing that is done on election night. We're hoping that those early voting results are available pretty soon after 8 p.m. But again, there is a process that they need to go through to make sure everything's in order before they report those results. And then the other big chunk of ballots that we're going to have are absentee ballots. We've already had over 1.6 million absentee ballots received, and we're going to have several 100,000 more. So there's going to be a lot of absentee ballots that are reflected in the total of unofficial results. Because this year we have the ability to for jurisdictions to pre-process their absentee ballots before election day, we do anticipate in general that absentee ballot results will be available earlier in most places than they were 4 years ago. And that's because they can get a head start on putting the ballots in the tabulators. They won't be so backed up on election day trying to process all the ballots that they had been receiving for several weeks, in addition to all the ones that come in on election day. I do want to caution that just because we can pre-tabulate ballots before election day, it doesn't necessarily mean everything is going to be done right at 8 o'clock. In fact, it does not mean that. And one reason for that is they do need to still wait for all the ballots that come in on election day, and including ballots that people may be dropping off right at 8 p.m. Those ballots need to be checked in by the clerk's office, brought over to the counting board, and then tabulated. So there's still potentially several hours of work after election night before we get all of the absentee ballots reported in the unofficial results. We are expecting some jurisdictions to, after the polls close at 8 p.m., release partial results of some of the absentee ballots that they've tabulated. So, for example, if a jurisdiction has 50,000 absentee ballots that they already pre-tabulated, they may be able to release the unofficial results for those ballots soon after 8 p.m. While they're still working on the, say, other 5,000 ballots that they got in on Tuesday. That's not something that jurisdictions are required to do, and it's not something they're all going to have capacity to do. But for those that do it, it will help us get more of those absentee ballot results, unofficial results in earlier. Now, again, it's not going to happen everywhere. In some places, it is still going to take longer, and that doesn't mean that anything is being done improperly. It just means that some of the post-election checks are being done. And then, yeah, so we'll talk about the county canvass. One last note I just want to make on the unofficial results is that for these November elections, the unofficial results are always coming in from the clerks. But one difference in November even-year elections is you also have media who are in a lot of the polling places, who are seeing the printed tabular tapes after they're printed out. And they may also be in absent voter counting boards and seeing those results. So often, if there's media there, those unofficial results get to the media websites faster than the ones that are reported by the clerks. And that's fine. It's just not something that we always have. So then we get to the county canvass. Again, the results that are reported on election night are unofficial. And so we rely on the county canvassers to actually review those unofficial results and verify that everything is accurate. So the primary goal of the county canvassers is they are looking at every single paper results tape that prints out of every single tabulator, and they're making sure that it matches the unofficial results. So if for whatever reason there was an error in the unofficial results, in the way they were reported, they are going to catch that when they look at the actual paper tape that gets printed out of the tabulator. So that's a really important check on the process. They also do other things. For example, if there was an error in tabulating ballots on election night or election day, they can correct that. It sometimes happens, for example, if the tabulator is not working for an hour, so voters are putting ballots in the auxiliary bin, and then the election workers forget to tabulate those at the end of the night. Things like that can be corrected during the canvass. So it's a really important process, a very critical check, but it is a ministerial process. It is not an opportunity for people to conduct wide-ranging investigations of the election. It's really focused on verifying that the results are accurate. And so county canvassers do certify. If they do not, it then goes to the Board of State Canvassers to take over, but that would have some serious consequences for the counties because they would be responsible for those costs. So then we get to the state canvass. Soon after the county canvasses meet and provide the certified results to the state, then our state Board of Canvassers meets. Like the Board of County Canvassers, the Board of State Canvassers is also comprised of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, so it is a bipartisan board. The Board of State Canvassers reviews the returns that were submitted and certified by the county canvassers to verify that they were accurate. So this is another check we have in the process. In the event that there are any errors or problems with what the counties submitted, that would be caught during the state canvass. So it provides another check on the process. The other thing that's critical about the Board of State Canvassers is that when they certify the election, that triggers the ability to do recounts. So if a statewide race is extremely close, like less than 2,000 votes specifically, we automatically do a recount. Otherwise, candidates, if they think the results were incorrect and the results were not properly tabulated, they can petition for a recount, pay a fee. They have to do that within 48 hours after the canvass. And then we would endeavor to conduct a recount on behalf of the board. Doing a recount of a statewide race is an extremely involved procedure, as you might imagine. Recounting, probably over 5 million ballots. It requires locations and hundreds or thousands of folks around the state to conduct that. So that would be need to be done very quickly after it were requested, so that we could finish conducting the recount before that safe harbor deadline on December 11th. The other thing I'll just mention here is that throughout the canvass process, we do sometimes find, slight differences. It could be because of a tabulation error that was corrected. Also, when we do recounts, we do sometimes find that when human beings recount ballots, there are slight differences in that total than what we have when the tabulators count them. That's not evidence that something was done improperly. It's common to have those types of differences. And then we would get to the next step, which is the Electoral College. So one of the things that's different, obviously, about the presidential election is that we are not directly electing the candidate as we do in other races, but we're actually electing the electors who correspond to that candidate. So whichever candidate wins the presidential elections, their electors who were nominated by the parties are the ones who actually get the certificate of election and are elected to the Electoral College. They get those documents verifying that they're bona fide electors, and then they meet on December 17th in the Capitol in Michigan to cast their votes in the Electoral College itself. Under Michigan law, if you are an elector, you have to vote for the person that you're pledged to. You cannot change your vote. If you do that, you are removed and replaced with a different elector. But this is the final step that we have in the process. And then following the Electoral College, we then send those official Electoral College results to the federal government, to the Congress, so that they can count the votes in the Electoral College on January 6th.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate you taking the time to walk through that. And just one quick last announcement. We have resources to support you. We'll send a toolkit after this meeting about the information reviewed today, summarizing it. We also have some great FAQ websites, which you see here, which we'll also include in the follow-up. And then closer to that time period Jonathan was talking about, look on social media for videos and other resources about what happens after the polls close. And there are no questions in the chat at this time. So I'll turn it over to you, Secretary Benson, to close us out.
Okay, if anyone has any questions, raise your hand now as we close. Happy to answer them. We also have plenty of resources for you available if you need them. It's going to be a challenging week. The smoothness that we've experienced so far is great. We try to, get through every day. It's been extraordinary to see 2 million people voting already. All of it is great, but challenges are ahead for sure. And despite all these challenges, my team and everyone we're working with across the state, all 1,500 clerks and election workers and the 83 county clerks, are going to successfully and transparently administer this election. And before, during, and following Election Day, we will follow the law and share the truth and deal in the facts. So with today's information, I hope you'll be able to join us in doing the same within your respective circle of influence, and we're here to help as we go forward. And of course, michigan.gov/election-facts also details the number of things that we're doing to preserve the integrity of the process. So thanks again for having us here today, and we're here to help in the days ahead.
Thank you, Secretary. And there are 2 questions that popped in. What we can do is, Jonathan, if you have a minute, we can take them. But for those that are dropping, thank you so much. And we'll also follow up with answers by email. Oh, Secretary, go ahead.
Yeah, I can just answer them really quickly. If the
Okay.
county board does not certify, responsibility falls to the Board of State Canvassers, and counties must bear the costs incurred. What are those costs specifically? The costs are often with any additional information the Board of State Canvassers needs to certify the election. Oftentimes it could be just transporting the documents from the canvass in the county to the state for them to review, and any additional staff time that's required there. So usually it's personnel and data related costs, if that helps. Also, are state electors obligated to vote for the presidential candidate that got majority of votes? Yes, that is what our law provides. The electors are granted to the presidential candidate who gets the majority of the votes. Did I get that right, everyone? Jonathan?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. I always just have to ask our director of elections just to make sure, have that additional confirmation. Thank you, everybody. Oh, wait, one more question. Where will state canvassers meet to certify the election? I don't think that is decided yet, right, Jonathan?
That's correct.
Yeah. I believe in, if and when there will be security provisions in place to protect the security of the facility. And as we get closer to that date, which is in 3 to 4 weeks, I'm sure more will be publicly known about the time and location of that meeting. Thank you, everybody.